Donald Trump's transition team is still ignoring standard procedure of submitting nominees for FBI background checks. This has been met by outcry from Senate Democrats and relative silence from Republicans. Here's one Democrat. Can you consider their nominations without FBI background checks?
Not responsibly. And I think my Republican colleagues know that we cannot really responsibly do our duty as senators to advise and consent. That's a constitutional obligation without that kind of routine vetting.
Now, in a news piece for the New York Times, two men who helped run vetting for that key Senate committee for years are speaking out. Here it is in part. We were the Republican and Democratic counsels who reviewed presidential nominees' background checks for the Senate Judiciary Committee. We know how the confirmation process is supposed to work and how important FBI vetting is to that process. That's why we're appalled by reports that the new Republican-led Senate and the incoming Trump administration may dispense with it. Joining us now are those two men. Noah Bookbinder, he was counsel for Democrats on Senate Judiciary for years. He's now executive director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW. And Gregg Nunziata, he was counsel for Republicans on Senate Judiciary, now executive director for the Society of the Rule of Law. Gentlemen, thank you guys for being here. I read your piece with a lot of interest. Noah, why is this appalling? What should people understand that they might be missing?
Well, first of all, we have a system where there are supposed to be checks and balances. There should be checks on executive power, particularly in this case, making sure that the people who are nominated to fill really important positions that affect our lives are people who are suited to do that, who have the appropriate character, the appropriate respect for law, and the Senate's consideration of those nominees is really key to make sure of that. And the Senate can't make that kind of evaluation in a responsible, reasoned way if it doesn't have a consistent and thorough review of who those people are and whether they meet kind of minimal standards. And that's what that FBI review process does.
Because it leads to the question, Greg, of what's the danger here? What could happen? What is your fear? While you consider that, I want to play what one of Donald Trump's biggest allies in the Senate, Republican Senator Bill Hagerty, said about this, and it's really been sticking with me.
I don't think the American public cares who does the background checks. What the American public cares about is to see the mandate that they voted in delivered upon.
Greg, what do you say?
Well, look, I believe the president is entitled to have appointees who share his worldview, and he won the election. What he's not entitled to have is appointees who don't have the character and the judgment to wield the responsibilities of the office to which they have been appointed. This is the whole purpose of the Senate confirmation process. The founders set it up to make sure that a president cannot install unqualified loyalists into positions at his pleasure, cannot put the trust and faith of the American people and the powers of this government in the hands of people who cannot be counted on to wield that power responsibly. So that's the point of this whole process. And the FBI review, it's not about FBI approval. It's about the Senate having an informed basis on which to render its judgment on confirmation.
And then, no, what do you say then when the response from the transition so far is we're using a private vetting company?
Well, with a private vetting company, first of all, we don't know who that is. We don't know what their qualifications are. But more importantly, we don't know if they are going to be consistent and thorough in the way that they review those nominees. And what that throws away too is this long established Senate process that Greg and I were a part of in a bipartisan way, where the Senate Judiciary Committee would receive these FBI background checks, would know what to look for, would follow up if there were gaps or things that required further investigation, so that the Senate would have all the information it would need to make sure that these nominees were appropriate people to serve the American people. With a private company, you just have no idea that that's going to happen and that the Senate is going to get the information that it needs. We have a bipartisan process that has worked for years and years. It just doesn't make sense to throw that away and bring in something unknown.
Yeah, and Greg, the question is, what's the harm in putting them through the FBI background check? Why not? Is there any good reason that anyone out there would have to say, no, let's throw out the system as it's been in place, the system, the vetting that you guys have used for years when you guys were counsels for the committee? Is there any good reason not to?
There's no good reason I could see. This is, as Noah said, been in place for years and years, decades even. This has been how things have been done in Washington for a very long time. It's a system that works. It's a system that's also confidential, which I don't think people understand. The Senate confirmation process has a public component, the hearings that everybody's familiar with, but the background investigation is done on a bipartisan basis, behind closed doors, and is taken very seriously. Noah and I worked together at a time when confirmation battles were maybe the most politically divisive issue in Washington. But that never extended to the background investigation, which we handled, again, confidentially, responsibly, on a bipartisan basis. It was never weaponized or misused. It was just used in service of informing our bosses in the U.S. Senate and performing their constitutional duty.
Yeah, and this is, and to your point, Greg, this is when you say this is how things have been done for years and years and years. This is one of those situations, even if you want change in Washington, this is one of those things you want to have happen for years and years and years. This isn't one of those throw it all out situations with regard to this. Noah, I did want to ask you, in your capacity as heading up CREW, what's your reaction to President Biden pardoning his son, Hunter Biden?
Well, I think that look, the pardon power is a constitutional power. It's a broad power, and so I think that the presidents are entitled to pardon who they want to. Obviously, there are questions that come up when pardons are used for people very close to a president. We saw that when Donald Trump was leaving office. We're seeing that now with President Biden. I think we'd ideally prefer that pardons be used when you have a vetting process and it's sort of a case that is objectively the type of case where there's been some kind of injustice. We don't know what kind of review or vetting there was here. So, I don't want to get too far into it, but I think that, this is a thing that happens in Washington, and, it's not necessarily ideally how you'd see that power used.
Yeah, well, I will say when it comes to the Senate confirmation process and the case you guys make together on a bipartisan basis, it's worth everyone taking a look at and reading. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.